office.
I got a dead cow in my creek, and there's blood all over the side of my damn house.
13811, 13811, come in.
Let's get out there in a hurry. That thing is moving fast. It's crossing the highway right now. We can't get out here. I can hear it.
Tonight, another body was discovered in the small town of Weyburn, Virginia, and has local residents terrified.
This thing is bigger than we thought.
For a while there, Weyburn was a great place to grow up. Everybody knew each other. It was the late 70s. Times were much simpler back then. Weyburn was your typical small lumber mill town. Quiet and safe. Until it wasn't. Weyburn, Virginia was located, as Daddy used to say, about a middle finger above Roanoke and a ass hair below Stanton. I think the only time we ever left Weyburn when I was a kid was on Daddy's 35th birthday. We drove 40 minutes to Stanton to go to old drive-in movie theater. But other than that, Weyburn was all I ever knew. Most folks in town were like Daddy, fifth-generation farmers, hard workers, and like Daddy, most of them worked for the Shelby Lumber Company as well. I'd say probably at least half the town did, if not more. Make ends meet. On weekends, Daddy drove one of the logging trucks. This way he could still work, Monday through Friday on corn tobacco fields we own. But the lumber mill was good for Weyburn. It helped folks make a simple but comfortable living back in. That was about up until old Danny Shiflett came to town. Danny was the new hotshot mayor from Richmond. He was basically looking to climb his way up the political ladder and looking for some low-hanging fruit to do it, and apparently, I guess, Weyburn was his low-hanging fruit of choice.
Hello, sir. How you doing? I'm Danny Shiflett, your new mayor here in Weyburn.
Danny came in making promises he was going to lower taxes for folks in Weyburn by forcing the Shelby Lumber Company into picking up the difference. One thing led to another. Mr. Shelby ended up shutting that mill down for 2 weeks, putting half the damn town out of work. Mr. Shelby's way of turning the town against old Danny Shiflett.
Now look, I, just like you, was under the impression that the Shelby Lumber Company was going to give us all some tax relief this year through the new deal Mayor Shiflett was working on. But as we now know, things apparently took a turn for the worse. And unfortunately, there's no way that this year's taxes can be avoided.
But apparently, there was a lot more to it than that. It was about 6:30 on a Wednesday night. Mama was folding clothes on the couch, and me and my brother were laying down on the floor in front of the TV. That's about when we heard the first engine go by. Then the second. Then a few minutes later, we heard 2 more fire engines go by. Now, to most folks, that may not be a big deal, but in Weyburn, that didn't make any sense. Weyburn only had 2 trucks. We had a pump truck and a ladder truck. We just heard 4 go by. After the 4th truck went screaming by, Daddy came running out of the bathroom, grabbed his keys, got in his truck, and took off to see what was going on. I remember walking out into the backyard with Mama, and the whole sky right on the other side of Owens Mountain turned bright red. There was a lumber mill. That whole damn thing was on fire. The saw house, the lumber yard, just one big damn bonfire. Now, at 14 years old, standing in the backyard, it looked like a damn spaceship crashed just on the other side of the mountain. I never seen anything like it except on TV. But for the grown-ups, that was their livelihood, literally going up in flames. They brought trucks in from Stanton and Lexington. It burned all through the night and half into the next day. It burned so hot and for so long, the firefighters, they were taking breaks and working in shifts. Even one of the Channel 8 news cars from Richmond caught on fire from all the ashes that were floating around in the air. I remember hearing the fire chief 2 days later on the news saying it was arson.
Fire, but I do feel like it was a set job. I feel like there's arson involved here in this place. Why do you believe that arson was involved?
Well, the simple reason is it caught in about 3 or 4 places at the same time, just a few minutes difference, and you just don't have that to happen.
I asked Daddy what arson meant. He said it meant one of 2 things: revenge or insurance money. And in the case of the mill, he put $5 on it that it meant both. Now with the mill burnt down to the ground, the Shelby Lumber Company just up and moved to West Virginia, leaving Weyburn in its rearview mirror. Half the damn town was out of work. And everybody and their cousin was looking at me or Danny Shiflett to figure out something, and something quick. And who better for Danny to team up with than Sheriff Pruitt? Tyler Pruitt had been the sheriff in Weyburn since 1972. And by the way, Danny didn't just randomly pick Weyburn off the map to run for mayor. Weyburn pretty much picked him.
Look, we both know you ain't exactly knocking out of the park over there in Richmond. What do I only come out there to Weyburn for? I don't understand exactly. You're a small fish in a big pond. You didn't come over here to Weyburn. Weyburn ain't gonna put me on the map. Now, I'm serious, Danny. My endorsement carries a lot of weight in this county. Yeah, I get you in here. You and I can run things. Make some big moves. Then next step, you set your sights on someplace like Lexington and Charlottesville, and before you know it, we're headed up to state representative. I think it'd be great for both of us. I'm not looking to retire in this town. You know, bring me on as you make big moves, you bring me on along with you. Head of security advisor. Either way, you get out here to Weyburn, we can make things happen together. It's going to be a lot easier. It's been hard out there. It's been hard in Richmond. A lot more competition out there. No, you're right. My voice is just not being heard in this town. Weyburn, like I said, big fish, small pond. What do you say? At this point, I'm willing to try anything, because this is just not working. Yeah, count me in. Let's do it.
Sheriff Pruitt was Danny's second cousin. Pruitt knew full well he'd have major influence over Danny since he was not only his sheriff and family, but he was also 12 years older. Having the mayor in your back pocket would make any sheriff's job a hell of a lot easier. Now, 2 weeks to the day after the mill burnt down, Mayor Shiflett and Sheriff Pruitt met in secret with 2 other men, Lonnie Hutchins, the town mechanic, and Lester Clemens, the town attorney. The meeting that night out at Lonnie's, the 4 of them came up with probably the biggest hoax ever pulled in the state of Virginia. That was pretty much the beginning of the end for the town of Weyburn.
Gentlemen, it's been 2 weeks, and we got nothing. We are in dire straits here, gentlemen. Did you know Shelby was going to up and leave like that? I don't think any of us did. I don't think none of us were expecting that. But here we are. Here we fucking are.
First off, you need to calm down. You ain't Richmond no more. We handle our own business out here. And no, I wasn't expecting Shelby to burn the mill down and up and leave. But he did. So now it's just a matter of finding some new investors, offering some good tax incentive so they can...
Oh, hell, Pruitt, it was your goddamn tax bullshit that got us in this mess in the first place. Look, nobody in their right mind, any kind of real money, is just going to walk into Weyburn and start writing us a check, especially after that lumber mill horse shit we tried to pull.
What if we scare them into writing us a check and lots of them?
It was Lonnie who came up with the Bigfoot idea. He spotted his son's $6 million man lunchbox over on his workbench, and on the side of it was a picture of Steve Austin wrestling with a Bigfoot.
I'm talking about bringing Bigfoot to Weyburn. Folks will want to come see for themselves, just like they did a few years ago back in that town in California, Willow Creek. People from all over flooded that town, buying hats and T-shirts and souvenirs and taking Bigfoot tours. It became the Bigfoot capital of the West. At one point in time, the news even said it was more popular than
Look,
Disney.
I hate to disappoint you fellas, but ain't no way in hell I'm going on live TV claiming we got a Bigfoot problem. Not after that lumber mill bullshit.
You won't have to. We'll get the whole town to do it for us.
Now, just how in the hell are we going to get them to do that?
Now, you got to remember, and this was 1978, Bigfoot was everywhere. From movies, books, TV shows, hell, even Halloween costumes. People wanted to see Bigfoot more back then than they do today.
We scare them into doing it. We do it by creating Bigfoot tracks, missing livestock, Bigfoot howls, tree knocking, just like you see in the movies. Just like Lonnie's saying, once the local news gets a hold of it, word will spread and people start coming in. They're going to need a place to eat, a place to sleep, and they're going to need gas to get back home. And you know they ain't leaving without buying some Bigfoot souvenirs that we will just so happen to have conveniently placed in every window storefront on Main Street. And the best part, Danny, guess who gets to stand in front of all the microphones and cameras while looking like the new town hero?
Well, holy shit, fellas. I think we just might have a Bigfoot problem on our hands after all.
The four of them sat in Monty's barn that night and plotted out how they were going to convince a town of 1,400 folks they now had a Bigfoot problem. The bigger picture was to draw on local TV and radio stations to help get the town on the map as a Bigfoot hotspot and bring in tourists, which in turn brings in money. And let me tell you, it worked.
Leyburn Sheriff's Office. I'm not even sure how to report something like this, but my husband wanted me to get on the phone and call y'all because we got what looks like appear to be Bigfoot tracks. He's saying these things go all around our barn, come right up to our house, and right up to our bedroom window.
I got human-looking tracks that are longer than my damn toolbox. I'm talking 20 inches long, and these things sink about 3 or 4 inches down to the ground. In order to do something like that, this thing's got to weigh between 800 and 900 pounds. It's a left-right stride. It's walking on 2 legs, and I'm talking they walk right over my damn fence line. This thing's got to be 9-10 feet tall in order to do something like that.
These tracks are huge. I'm talking as long as my son's skateboard. We got pictures. They're longer than his skateboard. This ain't no bear. My neighbor's trying to tell me this is a bear. This is a bear. I'm telling you, this is a Bigfoot. I don't want this thing coming back. I'm terrified.
I got what looked like to be, I'm dead
terrified. I got
It looked
kids.
like Bigfoot tracks
Okay?
sitting across my
I'm
damn
scared to
front
death.
yard.
I got the shotgun.
They're trailing off across the yard.
Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Bottle, Snowman, whatever you want to call it, but we got something here in Weyburn now.
Here's a story you may not believe. Local residents in the small town of Weyburn, Virginia are reporting seeing and hearing signs of the infamous mythical Bigfoot creature. Field reporter Jacob Bradley traveled out to Weyburn to cover tonight's story.
The small town of Weyburn, Virginia has been pretty quiet up until last week's snowstorm. That's when the sheriff's office phone lines were flooded with calls about Bigfoot tracks and hearing bone-chilling howls and tree knockings. One resident reported that he saw the 7 to 9 foot creature in his front yard. We got a chance to talk to him to hear firsthand about his close encounter with the infamous legend known as Bigfoot.
Well, I got up and had turned off the TV and come to the front door, which you can see right behind me. Just as usual, checking to see if it was locked. So I looked out the window at the top. That's when I saw this thing. I ran back in my kitchen and grabbed my flashlight. And when I came back, I shined it through my screen door. If it weren't for my dogs carrying on like they were, I would have thought it was just my imagination because it was late and I was so tired. But let me tell you something. These tracks he left behind ain't nothing like anything I'd ever seen. This thing was as tall and wide as an 8x4 sheet of plywood. So I opened the door after a few seconds to step out to see if I could really tell what it was. It just took off.
About 90% of the folks we talked to in Weyburn seem to feel Bigfoot does exist. But as with anything, not everyone in Weyburn is a believer.
As far as we know, it's just a joke.
What will it take to get you folks excited here then?
Well, I suppose when we see it coming down the hill, we'll get excited.
I don't know. I think it's just all hooey myself.
Either somebody proves that for the last 100 years or so, they've been traipsing around some of the most remote territory in the eastern United States with huge feet on making tracks, or been running around in a huge ape costume, or somebody brings back a Bigfoot, either dead or alive. Well, until either one of those two things happen, you and I are going to have to base our opinions on what little evidence exists or what seems more likely. Oh, by the way, one more thing. If you're out hiking or hunting or in a lonely campground some night and you get a chilly, eerie feeling, look around a little bit. Who knows? In the time it takes to pan a flashlight around, you might become an instant Bigfoot believer. Jacob Bradley, WDBJ News, out here in Bigfoot territory.
And just like some town folk who weren't buying into the Bigfoot sightings, some news stations were just as skeptical.
It's a difficult thing, really, to be in a market, see a television station achieve high ratings with what we feel are not good journalism standards. We're not going to bastardize our news for ratings.
So like they say in show business, even bad publicity is good publicity. But even with all the news coverage, good and bad, by the time March rolled around, Weyburn still wasn't getting the foot traffic they were hoping for. So naturally, they kicked things up a notch.
Last night, 2 men ran into the Weyburn Sheriff's Office, claiming they were terrorized out at their family's farm by a Bigfoot. Jacob Bradley has the story.
And I must pause here for a second and warn our viewers. This is some of the most graphic footage I have ever seen in my career. Viewer discretion is advised. This morning, the sheriff took us out to the farm and showed us the blood-stained side of the house where apparently a Bigfoot slaughtered one of the cows. We also followed the muddy tracks down to the creek that runs through their property, where we discovered a drowned cow and a deer, both in less than 2 feet of water. Sheriff Pruitt, can you tell us what these 2 men saw last night?
No, sir, I can't. All I can tell you is there was 2 men came into the sheriff's department approximately 8:30 and 9 o'clock. They were all excited, upset, wanting to climb the walls, hysterical, crying. That's actually all I know is what happened. I mean, as far as me seeing what happened, I don't know. We questioned them at length. And then we left the room and recorded all the conversation they had. Recorded between the 2 of them. And one of them kept wanting to pray. And he said, after all I went through on this earth, I said, why should I have to see something like this?
Can you tell me about the lie detector test?
Well, so that was run by Pilkington. It was a Pilkington?
Pennington. That they run this type of test about 6 times a day. And when they were asked to come over here to talk to these people, they had in their mind that it was just a big joke. Sheen showed that he was telling the truth. Then they run another one. And then the examiner, he began to wonder himself.
Mayor Shiflett has approved a $15,000 reward for the capture of a Bigfoot here in Weyburn, dead or alive.
And as always, not every resident believes there is in fact a Bigfoot here in the town of Weyburn. We got a chance to talk to one neighbor down the road who has her own theory on what may have happened here last night.
They was getting ready to make a sacrifice, I think, to the devil over that red moon. Anytime you get a bad change in the moon like that, you'll see this stuff come up. Just keep your eyes and ears open, boys.
Sheriff Pruitt says in order to collect the $15,000 reward, you must have a valid Bigfoot hunting license, which is only available for purchase in the town of Weyburn.
By noon the next day, every gun store within the 30-mile radius of Weyburn was sold out. And almost overnight, locals were turning their backyards into firing ranges. Women and young teenagers who had never even held a firearm before were quickly becoming expert marksmen. And every evening as night would fall over the town of Weyburn, folks barricading their doors and boarding up their windows suddenly became the new norm. And then within just 2 weeks after that newscast aired, Weyburn got what they wanted. Hunters came from all over for a chance to take home that $15,000, along with the bragging rights to be the first person to capture a Bigfoot.
You been seeing him, though?
Yeah.
Was he in the hardwoods or down in the swamp?
Hardwoods. In the hardwoods.
That's where you hunt up there. Was he following a doe or anything?
No, by himself.
What time was it?
9:30 this morning, and everybody in the woods knew it.
Oh, yeah? Why is that?
I screamed like a scalded dog.
Did you?
Daggone, we started grabbing guns and getting in position. I done had my gun on him, you know. And when he got up there, he was walking a little too fast to shoot him because I wanted a sure shot. And what I done, I just whistled. And he stopped, and he looked, and when he looked up, I shot him and he hit the ground. And he got up. And I said, my God, he's fixing to get away. And I just tried to shoot his head, bow! And I just shot a big old hole in the ground. I missed his head, and it was cloudy, like I said.
Well, it was about 7 foot tall, weighed about 350 pounds, and it was hairy, and I couldn't see his face. It was in the dark.
You said it took the tire off your pickup. What did it do?
No, it was not the tire off our pickup. It was in a sand pit that they dug dirt from, and he threw a tire some 400 to 500 feet. And the police that looked at the tire in the back of the car said that it had to come off from a pickup. We didn't have no pickup there, so we had a Rambler, little Rambler out there.
Did it look like he was throwing the tire at somebody, or?
He'd thrown it at everybody, about 40 people.
Now, $15,000 may not sound like a lot of money today, but back in 1979, that was closer to around $65,000. And as with anything that involves large amounts of money, it tends to bring in its fair share of problems as well. When the Hells Angels made their way into town, it was pretty clear things were starting to get out of control.
You know what I mean?
Do you as a Hells Angel believe in Bigfoot?
I believe in $15,000, man.
And as usual, it didn't take long before the Hells Angels got in their own way. 40 bikers drinking and fighting and shooting guns on the side of the highway quickly got the attention of the state police, which also helped the Angels vanish as quickly as they appeared. Now, having the Hells Angels show up didn't exactly do the town any favors as far as making Weyburn a family destination. So the Fraudulent Four, as they would later be known, came up with their best idea yet. They took the money they made off of those exclusive Bigfoot hunting licenses and decided to run TV commercials in the bigger cities like Roanoke and Richmond to show a more family-friendly tourist destination.
Welcome to Weyburn, Virginia, where the legend of Bigfoot comes to life. Nestled in the heart of the beautiful Appalachian Mountains, Weyburn is famous for its breathtaking views and its legendary Bigfoot sightings. Discover our quiet, family-friendly town, filled with unique shops and local eateries. Whether you're on a Bigfoot hunt or simply taking it easy, Weyburn is where family comes for adventure. Weyburn, Virginia, where every visit is legendary.
And like they say, third time's the charm.
Oh, we just wanted to see what it was like. I guess we just specifically came from Chicago to see it.
But do you believe all the stories?
Yeah, I do.
How many tourists has Bigfoot brought to Weyburn?
Oh, I don't know how many people, but there's about 2,500 canoes around here goes in the water on Saturday morning.
By the time midsummer rolled around, Weyburn had more tourists coming in than they knew what to do with.
Traffic entering the tiny town of Weyburn was at a standstill once again this weekend as tourists from all over the country made their way to what town officials have dubbed the Bigfoot capital of the East Coast.
We're in a tourist town here, whether we like it or not, because we had 1.5 million people, 1.5 million people, and we're just getting started. So what I can see in the future is going to be tourism. People are going to have to become accustomed to it, whether like it or not. It's here, it's going to stay, it's not going to leave. The national park's going to be here, it's not going to leave. So we're going to have to learn not to fight this thing. We're going to have to join them people and see what we can come up with.
So the townsfolk got creative. They turned the general store into the Bigfoot trading post. They sold everything from t-shirts to board games to your very own Bigfoot plastic feet. Local farmers got in on the act as well. Some were offering private Bigfoot tours, while others took more of a hands-off approach, basically letting tourists walk around their backwoods with a map to trace the Bigfoot's path that supposedly walked around their property, while other farmers offered a little more excitement. Then you had others who simply turned their farms into petting zoos. Some were even offering Bigfoot horseback riding tours with the hopes of coming across some of your very own Bigfoot tracks. But the real breadwinners were the farmers who turned their back 40s into makeshift campgrounds. Business in Weyburn was good. So good that Lester Clemens opened up his own Bigfoot burger joint called Clementine's, named after his wife of 32 years. And Lester wasn't the only member of the fraudulent four to cash in. Mayor Sheffoot held his own Bigfoot chili cook-off.
The first annual Weyburn Chili Cook-Off got underway this weekend. The event was sponsored by Mayor Danny Shiflett. They had over 150 cooks bringing in their top secret recipes, all for a chance to win the $500 first place prize. The cook-off had an attendance of over 3,000 people. That's double the population of the town itself.
And of course, Sheriff Pruitt wasn't one to be left out either. He didn't give out one speeding ticket that entire summer. Instead, he and his deputies issued warnings. This in turn made Weyburn about the friendliest town anyone would want to visit. In the meantime, Sheriff Pruitt opened his own music venue with the help of some private investors from Nashville. And of course, it was called Pruitt's. Now, the only one of the fraudulent four who wasn't happy was Lonnie, the town mechanic. After all, it was Lonnie who came up with the Bigfoot idea that turned Weyburn from a ghost town into one of Virginia's major tourist spots. Now, Lonnie was a mechanic and not much of a businessman. So when he saw Lester and Sheriff Pruitt and the mayor making money hand over fist, naturally he wanted in. So he went to Lester for some financial guidance and was quickly given the cold shoulder. Lester and Sheriff Pruitt and the mayor were too self-involved in their own businesses to even give Lonnie the time of day. He quickly started to see they weren't as close as he thought. Even though they all three served together in Vietnam for 2 tours, Lonnie was always the odd man out. Lester and Pruitt pretty much used him as a source for all their side hustles and off-the-books business ventures. Over in Vietnam, Lonnie was their source for cocaine and heroin. Lester and Pruitt weren't users, Just your average, highly decorated drug dealers to the troops. Since Lonnie worked in the motor pool over in Vietnam, he could get Lester and Pruitt a Jeep, a truck, hell, even the tank at a moment's notice. In return, Lester and Pruitt would let Lonnie tag along on what they used to call their fun runs. They usually meant going into Ho Chi Minh City for beer and prostitutes and whatever else was on the agenda. Pruitt was a master sergeant in the Army, an E8. He passed up Lonnie several times for promotion. Pruitt liked Lonnie right where he was, motor pool specialist, an E4. Lonnie was now starting to see that trend taking place all over again back at home, now that Wayburn was making money. Lester and Pruitt kept telling Lonnie to hold off until after the summer, when things would slow down, and then Lester would actually help Lonnie set up a side business to make some extra income. Well, as you can guess, summer came and went, and nothing happened. Wayburn at that time was getting infrastructure grants from the government for land use projects, and Lonnie saw firsthand how Lester, Sheriff Pruitt, and the mayor skimmed money off the top of those projects for their own personal use. And one of those personal uses actually worked out in Lonnie's favor. Lester and his wife left for 2 weeks to vacation down in Florida. Lonnie took that opportunity to break into Lester's office. Back in Vietnam, Lester used to routinely brag how he recorded every phone conversation he had with his superiors, in case they ever tried to hang him out to dry in a court-martial. So with that little bit of inside information, Lonnie was pretty sure Lester had been recording all their conversations in his barn over the past year, and he was right. He found the tapes in Lester's office and decided to use them to blackmail the other three. Lonnie was no longer interested in Lester's help in setting up a side business. Now, he just wanted cash. He came up with a monthly payment plan of $5,000, or he would leak the tapes to the press. Sheriff Pruitt quickly pointed out that Lonnie would go to jail right along with them. But unlike Pruitt and the others who had families to support, Lonnie didn't. He was also quick to point out that if anything should happen to him, he sent copies of the cassette to a trusted friend who lived out of state. And like they say, the most dangerous man in the room is a man with nothing to lose. So for the next 4 months, Lonnie got what he wanted. And around this time is when the mayor started on his second phase of his political climb. Mayor Shiflett hired a documentary crew to come in and follow him around and make a film about how he's turned Wayburn from a ghost town into a major tourist spot. This was his attempt to help him climb up to the next rung in his political ladder. The finished project never saw the light of day, except for what you're about to see here.
See? You're being filmed for a movie. You knew that?
No, I didn't know what was taking place here.
Yeah.
What kind of movie are we making?
Well, I don't know for sure. It's I've got these fellows they're following me. They're riding with me today and following me and taking pictures. And I don't know. Maybe I guess I don't know whether I'm running for governor or state representative.
Well, you might make a good governor. Never know.
Fellas, shut that camera off.
Old Danny, he don't even know whether he's running against anybody. Nothing. He's still campaigning.
Well,
campaigned 24 days.
As the old boy up in Eminence used to say, you got to keep your name as common as Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola.
50 years ago, 25 years ago, this area was one of the poorer parts of the whole country. And I think that it's going to be the richest part of the state. I know we'll have tourism, and I think this area of the state is going to be full of Cadillacs. And I hope I'm fortunate enough to have one.
Now, before we go any further, I'm sure you folks have been wondering exactly how they pulled off those Bigfoot tracks to begin with. First thing I had to do was figure out how to get enough tracks out there to get people's attention almost overnight. Lester was the one who suggested to time it with the first snowfall. That way, they would not only stand out, but the impressions would be deeper and cleaner and more dramatic looking. Lonnie knew he could create the Bigfoot feet out of wood planks, but the long stride length was the hard part. The average human stride length when walking is about 2.5 feet. A Bigfoot stride would be at least twice that. Now, farmers have been using stilts for centuries to pick fruit from the trees before mechanical equipment came along. But walking on stilts is one thing. Heavy wood planks attached is another. And they also need to make lots of tracks and fast, so stilts were out of the question. That's when Sheriff Pruitt suggested they use Clayton Williams as their Bigfoot. Clayton was a 6'9", 300-pound farm boy who lived 2 towns over, and it just so happened that he had a court date coming up for drunk and disorderly and resisting arrest. Sheriff Pruitt gave Clayton the option, if he agreed to lay down some Bigfoot tracks over the weekend and keep his mouth shut, his court date would never see the light of day. But if he did talk, that court date would jump right on the books and he'd face 90 days in jail. Naturally, Clayton agreed to play Bigfoot. His stride may have not have been 5 feet long, but with those heavy wood plank Bigfoot-style snowshoes, he left some pretty convincing tracks. But probably like you, the part I was most curious about was the drowned cow in the 2 feet of water. Well, turns out that was just Mother Nature. Freak accident. The cow somehow had tripped on some river rocks and broke its neck. It was on a property line that backed up to Lonnie's farm. He saw it late in the evening and simply called Pruitt to bring Clayton over. They ripped open the side of the cow and filled a bucket up with its insides and had Clayton put on his Bigfoot feet, walk up to the house and splash blood all over the side of it in the middle of the night. It was all really simple, actually. No fake monkey suits or tire throwing was involved. And apparently some folks just wanted to be on TV more than others, which clearly worked out in Wayburn's favor. But like Dad used to say, as sure as every dark cloud has a silver lining, the white puffy ones have a shitstorm brewing behind them as well.
This morning, local residents of Weyburn, Virginia, the newly crowned Bigfoot capital of the East Coast, are left in shock and disbelief after the grisly discovery of a local businessman who was found dead in his vehicle this morning. 45-year-old Lonnie Hutchins, owner of the Weyburn Garage, was found slumped over the steering wheel of his truck in his own driveway with a gunshot wound to the back of his head. The grim discovery was made around 8 a.m. by the town's mailman on his morning route, who then immediately reported the incident to local authorities. Sheriff Pruitt said there are no suspects or leads at this time and is asking anyone with any information to please contact the Weyburn County Sheriff's Office.
And within just 2 days of Lonnie's death, Lester Clemens decided to have Lonnie's truck repaired and cleaned up and sold off at auction in order to quote-unquote help pay for Lonnie's funeral cost.
When it came in, it had 2 bullet holes through the side of the box over there that came up. And there was holes in the back of the cab, front of the box, and then through the windshield, through the back glass. Side glass was blown out. New seats from the blood stains. And then there was specks of blood all over the inside, of course, and we had to clean that all up.
Needless to say, that raised even more suspicion about who was actually behind Lonnie's murder.
We've never had a murder here, as I ever remember.
We have never, ever, as Ken said, never locked our doors. But now we never go to sleep without the doors locked.
You know, eventually somebody's going to have to take notice that something bad's going on down here and step in and help correct it.
Still looking for any clues that would point us in the right direction for why a person would have done this type of thing.
Then on the evening of April 25th, 1980, during the 6 o'clock evening news, the bottom fell out for the town of Weyburn, and the whole house of cards came tumbling down.
In a shocking development in the murder of Lonnie Hutchins, a Weyburn businessman found dead in his driveway just 48 hours ago. Leaked cassette tapes have emerged implicating Hutchins along with Mayor Danny Shiflett and Sheriff Tyler Pruitt in orchestrating a Bigfoot hoax in the town of Weyburn, now known as the Bigfoot capital of the East Coast. The tapes, which were released exclusively to Channel 7 News, feature conversations between Hutchins, Mayor Shiflett, and Sheriff Pruitt discussing their plan to create a Bigfoot problem in Weyburn. The recordings detail strategies to instill fear and panic among citizens, all with the end goal of boosting tourism and municipal funding. Residents of Weyburn are left reeling as the investigation continues to unfold in this bizarre twist of a once quiet, small lumber mill town.
Once the civil and state and federal lawsuits started pouring in, it didn't take long for the inevitable to happen. Mayor Shiflett was the first to be arrested. He was able to bond out that same evening and apparently decided to take matters into his own hands. According to the train conductor, Nathan Crawford, he saw a pair of headlights cross some of the tracks and then turn and head directly into his path. However, the state police took not one, but 3 reports from eyewitnesses Oliver and Wendell Oakes, who were night fishing on the bank of Smith's Pond located to the right of the railroad crossing, stated that the mayor's truck was in fact stopped when they saw a Bigfoot appear and lean down and push the mayor's truck onto the tracks. Those two statements were identical to the one given by Roger Nunley, a Bell Atlantic telephone lineman who was working on a pole on the opposite side of the railroad crossing. He reported to seeing an 8 to 10 foot tall creature that was lit up by the mayor's rear brake lights as it pushed the truck onto the tracks. He could hear the tires skid across the asphalt and at one point noted the engine redlining as it was put into reverse before it was being struck by the train. Naturally, as one would suspect, these statements were quickly dismissed and never taken seriously. Now the fraudulent four were down to two: the town attorney Lester Clemens and Sheriff Tyler Pruitt. Sheriff Pruitt was the next one to be arrested. He quickly confessed to everything, but denied that they ever made any Bigfoot howls or the tree knockings that were reported. He maintained that they talked about creating the sounds but knew that not many farmers in Weyburn owned portable tape recorders. So instead, they decided to focus on visual evidence that could be shown by news cameras the next day to gain quicker national attention. Sheriff Pruitt also only confessed to laying down 2 sets of tracks the first night, due to Clayton Williams was getting worn out from walking around with the heavy wood planks attached to his boots in the knee-deep snow. He also noted that if you look at the tracks from the 4 different locations, they don't match up. He stated that Lonnie only made 1 set of wooden Bigfoot feet. Pruitt also stated for the record that they only laid down Bigfoot tracks 2 times, once in the winter of 1978 and during the spring of 1979. He even went so far as to swear under oath that he and the others weren't responsible for all the other tracks and eyewitness reports that were reported from 1978 to 1981. Sheriff Pruitt received a 20-year prison sentence, but only served 2 years before he was stabbed to death by another inmate over a dispute about a sketch David Letterman had made years earlier about the sheriff and the mayor.
Mayor, aren't you willfully deceiving the public with this?
Oh, no, not at all. Bigfoot really does exist. We're just helping keeping it alive, just like advertising. Huh?
Well, gentlemen, the rhetoric is certainly well rehearsed, but isn't it true, after all, that there is not one single bit of tangible proof?
Well, Clyde's got him on film, right, Mayor? Clyde Porter's got him on film.
As for Lester Clemens, by the time the district attorney issued a warrant for his arrest, Lester had skipped town, leaving everything, including his family, behind. His last known location was from a speeding ticket just outside of Oklahoma City in 1982. If Lester is still in fact alive, he would be 98 years old as of March 15th, 2025. As for the rest of the town of Weyburn, they got hit the hardest.
I'm going to try to stick it out another year or two to hang on. I'm cutting my operations on. I'm changing things up to trying to do better, to make ends meet is the biggest thing. And I want my kids to be on the farm because I just think it's a better life than it is raising up in a factory or city or something like that. I just feel like they should be outside. I know I like to be outside. I don't like to be closed up, and that's where I want my family, is on the farm. But if things don't change within the next 2 years, I won't have any choice but to probably sell out and find a job somewhere like everybody else is doing or having to do. I know a few of my neighbors are having to do it, so.
We're mountain people, and we're Appalachian, and we're deep bred into these mountains, and we're so afraid people's come in before and they took stuff away. You know, they brought all these industries in, and then the same people that brought it in took it back out. Whether, you know, you believe in it or not, after that happened, we lost everything. We lost the railroads, we lost our stores, we had nothing.
The town quickly went bankrupt, and all the farmland was eventually sold off to big corporations like Tyson Chicken, Walmart, and most recently, Amazon. In fact, there is an Amazon distribution warehouse that sits right where Lonnie's barn once stood.
And cut. All right, Waylon, that's a wrap. We are done for the day.
Now look, I get that all this may be a little hard to believe, and I get it, I do. So, I will leave you with this one to try on for size.
A state lawmaker in Oklahoma has filed legislation that established a designated hunting season for Bigfoot. The bill is sponsored by Republican Justin Humphrey. It would direct the Oklahoma Wildlife Conservation Division to create annual dates of the season and any necessary hunting licenses and fees. Humphrey represents an area in the southeastern part of Oklahoma that is known for Bigfoot sightings. The area even hosts an annual festival celebrating the creature, which many believe is mythical. Humphrey believes that a dedicated Bigfoot hunting season would encourage even more tourism. He also hopes to secure at least a $25,000 bounty for the person to trap Bigfoot.